Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let's begin with some practice. Go ahead, sit comfortably. Focus on the breath for a moment, just to ground yourself. Allow your attention to focus on the physical rather than being caught in the movements of mind. Just allow yourself to observe the movements of mind. Really observe it without judging it, without trying to change it or modify it. Just observe. What is it that it's arising? And what remains after the thought is gone? To really begin to notice those moments between the thoughts. What's there listening to the thoughts? Just listen and notice. Just notice. Just notice what's listening to the thoughts. Notice the silence and just notice them. Allow yourself to sit in the silence as the silence, letting everything else change around you while you're firmly sitting in the unchanging silence. Just sit in the silence. Become the silence. Let all the distractions just be. Just sit in the silence. Become the silence. Allowing everything else to change. Let the changing change. Be the undisturbed, unchanging. Continue to sit in the silence, becoming the silence. Continue to sit in the silence, aware of the silence, becoming the silence. Continue to sit in the silence. For the next few minutes, no further instructions will be given. Just sit. Slowly, very slowly, open your eyes and relax. Actually, sitting in silence is really all that's required. Technique can be used as a means to foster it. So I'm not negating technique, but it's actually the silence that transforms, that changes. Yeah. I'm seated in everyone's heart. And from me comes knowledge and forgetfulness. So that was a shloka by Sri Krishna. Of course, he continues with, of all the Vedas am I to be known. So it's like that I that's seated in everyone's heart is an obvious I. On top of it is all the noise. So if you want to connect to that, it's just sit in silence. So this is why, since probably for the last 10,000 years, people in India have been going to the Himalayas to sit and contemplate. Yeah, years ago, when I was up in Gangotri, I managed to meet a person from Delhi who was actually living in a cave. But that's what he was doing. He was sitting in silence. And as you sit in silence, there's a transformation that occurs. There's what's unimportant in your life just sort of starts to drop. And what's important in your life starts to sort of get more attention. I hate this. I won't oversell it. At times, it's also somewhat confusing along that path, because as things drop away, sometimes it's a little bit frustrating with memory. But that knowledge and forgetfulness are both part of that process. So the knowledge, is important. It's important to know, but it's also important to let go, to just let it dissolve. And how do you know if something needs to be addressed or to be dissolved? Well, that's a difficult one. It's a very practical. I'll say there's no straightforward answer to it. No one can tell you what the answer is. You can discover the answer of what's appropriate at any given time by sitting in silence or by engaging. So it's the same but opposite. So on the one hand, there's the part that is still, but there's that intelligence from that part that also moves. So it's allowing that part to move by not, I would say, for lack of a better word, stifling it. And what stifles it? Overthinking. unclear thinking. I guess in psychological terms, maladaptive thinking. Thinking that really doesn't have a purpose is just, you could say, a dance, a drama. So this is about letting go of the personal drama and connecting with the impersonal. And the simplest techniques for doing this are often the most effective. Just sit in silence, or just allow everything to be as it is. Just sit. And as you sit, right, and this is where you can inquire into. There may be some turmoil in your life at this time, but there may be suffering at any given moment. The question to ask at those moments: who's confused? Who's suffering? While in the silence. So that's the question. It's not a question necessarily looking for an answer, but it's a question in the silence, sort of a pointing towards. So who's really the one that's confused? The real question is there really someone who's confused? Or is there simply the state of confusion? You can see there's a distinction between the two. It's not that I am confused. It could simply be the state of confusion. That's a mental state. Is the I really confused? Or is there confusion dancing up on top of what is the I? And these are things to inquire into, because it doesn't matter who says it. It could be Ramana, it could be Nisargadatta Das Maharaj, it can be Krishna, it can be anyone who's experienced the truth in some point or had a glimpse of it, can state it, can write it down. But it doesn't mean anything until there's a certain amount of experience, context with it. And the experience comes with the sitting. Just sit. Be still and know. So the first part is the most important part of it. Be still. There is the stillness. And on top of that, so it's like to use that analogy, there's the water, you could say the ocean, and the waves. If I see myself as a wave, I rise in the ocean, I crest, and then I collapse. And the identity as a wave, which is essentially identifying with the body-mind, is very insecure by its nature. Its nature is insecure. There is no security for a body-mind. And that's why human beings defend that part. Especially the egoic mind defends itself, you know. If you challenge an ego, right, if you push the right buttons, right, the person will react. And a lot of times react with a lot of violence, right? Because I'm pushing on that which is identified with, right, their own drama, that which they falsely believe to be true, and that's very threatening, because what are you without it? What's the addict without alcohol? What's the engineer without a job? What exists without body? What's beauty without youth, right? So it's like, it's all of these things are insecure. Identity is insecure. You can, if you look at almost any person, if a set of conditions, if let's say 5 conditions occur, you know, they can have a total almost circumstances, a total identity collapse could happen, right? And people fall into depression. And that's what happens sometimes, right? It's if you're very strongly identified with something, if you're very strongly identified with your spouse and your spouse dies, then there's that. And I'm not just talking about normal grief. There's always a missing, a hurt, right? In any situation, when things happen, there's that period of change, but if you're strongly identified with it, then the suffering becomes more intense. And eventually, right, sometimes the suffering can take over. But if you recognize the impermanence in all of it, and which is why we always talk about this. In fact, as part of any funeral in Hindu tradition, people chant 12th chapter, 15th chapter, or other chapters. Basically, and most of these chapters say, you know, life is temporary, that you're not actually the body. The body is temporary. That which is permanent is permanent. And even this belief structure gives some relief. But underneath that belief structure, there's that part that knows that. So that part that knows we're permanent, and then there's that part that's so insecure, right? And that's the egoic part, because it is impermanent. And in fact, the egoic side of it actually isn't even real, meaning from the standpoint of there's nothing tangible to it. There's nothing actually there. There's lots of thoughts, lots of interconnected concepts, but you're not a concept. So in the Ribu Gita, Rishi Ribu talks about, says, just be free in that state, or abide in that state where you're free of all concepts. So there's that state You could say, no, that's instructions, meditation instructions. Basically saying, just abide in that state where you're free of all concepts and be happy. There's nothing to achieve. There's no one achieving. You say, then what am I? And that I am is, on the other hand, very solid. It's not conceptual. It's just obvious. I am. That's what, at each time when you inquire, you see the I am. It's like, I am. It's like when someone asks who you are, it's initially there's just that state of confusion, and it is that I am. There's no answer. The brain goes tilt. And what's left is the I am. That's what you are. That which can't be taken away. That which is permanent. And that's that inquiry. So that's when we look at, the techniques that we inquire, it's like, okay, so what is permanent? What was I before I was born? What is that exists, that has existed? So it talks about from boyhood to youth to old age, right? It's that cycle. We call it that cycle of birth and death. But there's something that's constant throughout the cycle. There was something that I was, even back to when I was a child. That I amness was there, right? And that I amness has continued throughout my life. Something has, right? What was I when I was a child? And not what did I believe when I was a child? No, because those beliefs are so different. But what was I when I was a child? And what am I now? And then you keep going back. What was I before I was born? So are we ready to practice some self-inquiry? Go ahead and sit. Just be comfortable. Allow yourself to just sit in the silence, become the silence, or focus on the breath, or simply allow everything to be as it is. The initial technique doesn't matter, but just sit as the silence. And in that state of deep listening, sort of inquire with that curiosity. What am I right now? And just sort of rest with that question. What am I right now? Allow that question to settle. And as you're asking the question, you need to let go of what you're not, because that's not the answer. You know you're not your thoughts because you can observe them. You know you're not any sensation that's arising, any mental state, any belief. Since all of those are observed at this moment. So what you are must be more primary. What is that primary I am? Really begin to explore that. Sit with that question. What am I? What am I? What am I? What am I? what's truly real, what's permanent. What's not dependent upon thinking. What am I? What am I? Notice what's obvious just underneath the thoughts. Notice the silence, listening to the thoughts. Allow yourself to be open to the experience of I am. Without expectation. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Patrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chetanji. Very nice class.
Thank you.
Chetanji.